Chapter 76 Games Within Games. With the passage of 2 months, Maximus had received some very important news that made him extremely happy. Hela, Ariane, and Lilith had all gotten pregnant around the same time. Hela was the most proactive of the bunch, and she was the first one to announce her pregnancy, while Ariane and Lilith were a few weeks after. Each member of the Imperial Harem used a fertility potion to increase their chances of getting pregnant early on. Each one of them wanted to bear Maximus's child as quickly as possible. Ariane wanted her child to be the first one birthed in order to gain an edge over the others. She was perfectly fine with the whole Imperial Harem thing, but sometimes she felt overwhelmed by how powerful the others were than her. She got along with all of them as they formed a close sisterhood with each other. It was just that they were all much better than her in everything. Yet, despite her insecurities, Ariane knew her position was as great as it would ever be. She may not have wielded necrotic flames like Hela, or great magic like Merlin, but she had been raised in the serpent's nest of Sunspear, taught to read men and women like maps. Her pregnancy gave her a new edge, a symbol of House Martell's bloodline now forever woven into the future of the Imperial Union. It wasn't just about being first, it was about being irreplaceable. And if her child was a son, the implications would be enormous. Lilith, on the other hand, didn't care for such games. She relished the thrill of motherhood like she did battle, another conquest, another responsibility she would dominate. As the first of Maximus chosen to join him, she had long since accepted her place as the quiet, unmovable pillar of the harem. Her loyalty to Maximus was unquestioned, and she believed that their child would be the strongest. Hela didn't hide her pride either. She announced her pregnancy with her usual theatrical flair, appearing during a council meeting, casually declaring, "By the way, I'm creating life now. Isn't that ironic?" Even Merlin cracked a smile at how stupid the announcement was. Ariane burst out laughing, not even able to hold her laughter back. She attended several of these meetings and oftentimes felt overwhelmed by the things that were discussed. So when Hela came in and said something stupid, she felt a sigh of relief. Back in Westeros, the tides of war were beginning to shift. The Riverlords, backed by Robb Stark's northern host, had begun pushing into the western lands, burning supply routes and striking at key Lannister holdings. Tywin Lannister was forced to leave Harrenhal and march west to meet them. That left the capital more vulnerable than before. In the shadows of King's Landing, Varys moved like a ghost. Though he served the Iron Throne in appearance, his loyalties remained unclear. The whispers that reached his little birds spoke of too many kings and too few crowns. The arrival of the Imperial Union into Westerosi politics changed the very foundation of the game, and Varys, ever the planner, began to consider the unthinkable, an alliance. Perhaps the realm does not need a king, he thought. Perhaps it needs an emperor. Meanwhile, Viserys had just turned 22 and was reading about the state of his homeland. The Lannisters and Baratheons had caused the continent to be split up into various factions, all vying for control over the crown. Viserys was very different from his canon counterpart. He had grown up with his mother and with Maximus and a few other people as sort of father figures. He was taught the truth about his father, which caused him to criticize the actions and things his father did, but also recognize that his father was a product of his time. Having gone to the Imperial Academy of Excellence from 18 to 22, he was now going through the Imperial War Academy and would graduate in 4 years. As he grew up, he was told by his mother and others that his future would be decided only by one person, himself. He would control what he wanted to do in his future, but only through his conviction and determination will Maximus decide to help him. It would be a lie to say that he didn't want to restore their house to glory like before. He wanted House Targaryen to rise again, but this time, different than it was in the past. He wanted to reform the way the house and the kingdom worked, and he believed that under Maximus's leadership and support, he could do just that. He had some time to think about, so he wanted to wait until he graduated before he decided what he really wanted to do. For Daenerys, she had just reached the age of 14 and was still in school learning alongside others. She had become a well-known person throughout Heaven's Reach because of her compassion and her motivation to do good. She loved doing community service and everyone admired her for it. However, not everyone revered the young princess. Some harbored jealousy over the attention she received, while others simply didn't like her. They judged her for being born into one of the highest-ranking families, yet choosing to mingle with the commoners. Nonetheless, Daenerys paid them no attention, choosing instead to continue on with her endeavors. None of these haters could actually do anything as she was protected by the Emperor, and nobody wanted to anger the person who had a cult following of millions of people. Meanwhile, in the far north, Jon Snow continued his training alongside Samwell Tarly under Ser Alliser Thorne as recruits of the Night's Watch at Castle Black. Jon had learned about the death of his father Eddard, but he had an oath to keep under the Night's Watch. He decided to leave the fighting with his brother Robb, while he continued his training at Castle Black. Far north of the Wall, Maximus had purchased and dispatched 2,000 Viking axemen, 20,000 system points, and set up a small camp on the shoreline of the region. This camp would be used to start sending Shadowhand agents throughout the region to keep tabs on what was going on and the movements of the Night King. Another task the Vikings were ordered to do was to start helping the people beyond the Wall. To do this, a surplus of food was sent, and the Vikings would offer this food to the surrounding villages. This would be the first step to begin the integration of the people into the Imperial Union sometime in the future. As 299 AC rolled around, Ned Stark and his daughters were finally able to escape aboard a ship to Heaven's Reach. Arriving at Pentos, Ned was taken outside of the city, where he boarded an Imperial airship. Just approaching this massive airborne fortress left Ned speechless. The vessel was larger than any ship he'd ever seen. No sails, no oars, just a massive floating ship that traveled over land. Sansa clutched his arm, awestruck. Arya, wide-eyed, couldn't stop pacing, trying to see every angle of it. "It flies?" Ned asked the escorting officer. The armored man gave a short nod. "It flies. Welcome aboard the Stormbreaker, Lord Stark." Once aboard, the family was given quarters more luxurious than anything Ned had seen even in Winterfell's grandest rooms. The interior had dark wood and golden inlays. There were runes etched into the walls, which was the protective magic engraved into the hull. Meals were brought swiftly, warm, spiced, and foreign, but delicious. The journey to Heaven's Reach took 2 days. By the time the ship began its descent toward Heaven's Reach, he had the same reaction as anybody who saw the city for the first time. The view from the airship shocked all 3 Starks. When they disembarked, a small royal guard awaited them, dressed in black and gold. Leading them was a tall man wearing armor and a head cape flowing behind him. His hair was short and gray-streaked. This man escorted them inside of the palace where they were brought before Maximus. Ned stepped forward. "Emperor Maximus," he said carefully, "I owe you thanks for saving my daughters and myself." Maximus shook his head. "You don't owe me anything, Stark. You were wronged by your king who brought you into this Game of Thrones and almost killed by your queen. I don't exactly have a good opinion of Queen Cersei or the Lannisters." Arya stepped forward next, eager to ask her questions. "Is it true you killed a man with your bare hand? Ripped his heart out?" "Arya?" Sansa whispered, mortified at what her sister just asked the Emperor. Maximus chuckled, hearing Arya's quirky personality, before responding, "It is." Arya grinned like she had just found her new hero. "I brought you here not just for safety," Maximus continued, his tone turning serious, "but because I believe the North will have a part to play in what's coming." Ned raised a brow. "What's coming?" Maximus glanced up at the sky, where wyverns still soared, and his voice lowered. "Winter, a real one, and things darker than snow are stirring beyond the Wall. Your son Robb is a good man, but the wars of kings are distractions. I have larger plans for this world. I want the North at my side, not buried in Lannister gold or Baratheon pride." Ned's jaw clenched. "We've never knelt easily." "I'm not asking you to kneel," Maximus replied. "It's up to you to decide what will happen in the future." Sansa and Arya listened in silence. Sansa watched her father carefully, already understanding the weight of these words. Arya looked ready to jump at the offer. "I'll consider it, but I'll not sell my people to another crown, even one that flies." Maximus nodded. "That's all I ask. Consider it. Talk to your daughters. See the truth for yourself." As he said this, a royal guard had whispered something in his ear. Stannis Baratheon had called for the aid of several Sellsword companies who were stationed out of either Braavos or Pentos due to them being banned from moving through Imperial land. "Interesting," Maximus said, then turned back to Ned. "Take your time. Rest. Then when you're ready, you can depart for the North and see your sons and wife once again." As he walked away, Arya whispered, "I like him." Sansa frowned. "He's terrifying." Ned remained silent as they were escorted to guests' rooms. This whole Game of Thrones scheme that was transpiring was not something he wanted to be a part of. Yet his son had already put them into the game, so he may not have a choice. Chapter 77, A Surprise Proposal from the Vale. Sitting at his desk, Maximus had in his hand a letter sent from the Eyrie by House Arryn. The letter was from Lysa Arryn, the Lady Regent of the Vale. The letter said, "Emperor Maximus, it is with hope and goodwill that I write to you from the heights of the Eyrie. In these troubled times, friendship and loyalty are more precious than ever. As Lady Regent of the Vale, it is my responsibility to safeguard the future of my sons and daughter and House Arryn itself. To strengthen ties with the Imperial Union and bind our futures together, I humbly propose a betrothal with my late husband Jon Arryn's beloved daughter, Lady Ardes Arryn. She is fair of heart and strong of spirit, trained in courtesy and honor, worthy of any lord's respect and affection. I invite you to the Eyrie to discuss this proposal in person, hopeful that our houses may soon stand united through bonds of family, strength, and honor. Lysa Arryn, Lady Regent of the Vale." Placing the letter on his desk, he thought about the potential benefits of this proposal. Naturally, he didn't have anybody to marry House Arryn, but with Dorne becoming part of the Imperial Union, House Martell did have viable options for uniting both the houses under the Imperial Union. If Ardes Arryn married Aegon Targaryen, then that would unite House Martell and House Arryn. But such a proposal would be the first of its kind in a long time. The Vale and Dorne were separated by over 1,000 miles. However, both still had coastal cities that they could use to stage fleets of ships to reach each other. Then there was the protection that the Imperial fleet would provide for both regions. The benefits outweighed the negatives. The only problem was the nobles. Unlike Dorne, the nobles of the Vale were notoriously narrow-minded. They prized tradition, and many looked down on Dorne's customs, especially their equal treatment of women and their looser attitudes toward succession and marriage. Convincing the lords of the Vale to accept a match with a Dornish prince, especially a Targaryen raised under the Martells, would take more than politics. He sent a wyvern rider to the Eyrie and to Dorne explaining to them the situation and inviting Prince Doran to join him, who immediately accepted. He was tired of being pestered by his wife, Lady Malario, who kept talking about war all the time. She claimed that this was their chance to claim the Iron Throne by using the Imperial Union power to subjugate the entire continent. He obviously had no intention of doing such a thing, as he was already secretly told Maximus's plan, which involved returning the Targaryens to power on the Iron Throne under the Imperial Union. This route was better not only for Dorne, but also for House Martell as well. As the first great house to support them, they would gain a lot of influence and other advantages. Prince Doran was picked by an Imperial airship which landed somewhere near the palace gardens. The airship had caused a stir within the Sunspear's population, as this was their first time seeing such a thing. A ship that flew through the air was something they had only heard stories about from traveling merchants and other people who went to Imperial lands. Escorting the airship were 10 Griffin riders, which also grabbed the attention of the local population. People started to refer to them as flying lions, as that was the closest comparison that they had. On board the airship, Prince Doran was accompanied by Elia and her children alongside Prince Oberyn and his sand snakes. The airship flew from Sunspear all the way to the Eyrie, flying over the lands belonging to Stormlands and Crownlands. Lysa had come outside to greet them, a welcoming smile on her face, as she expected to see the Emperor. But once she saw Prince Doran, she became confused about what was going on. Lysa looked at the figures disembarking the airship, Prince Doran, and beside him Prince Oberyn. The sand snakes followed, each carrying themselves as the daughters of Oberyn. Elia Martell stood with her children just behind them. "Prince Doran," she said, descending the Eyrie steps with her guards behind her. "You honor us with your presence." "Lady Regent." Doran bowed slightly. "The honor is mine. The Vale is as majestic as the songs say." She nodded, accepting his flattery. "I must admit, I had expected Emperor Maximus. His absence surprises me." Doran smiled at her statement. His Excellency felt it more fitting for those directly involved in the proposal to arrive first. After all, it is House Martell that stands to be joined with House Arryn, should you still be so inclined. Lysa's expression didn't change. "Of course, you must be tired from your journey. Accommodations have been prepared." Oberyn stepped forward, showing a smile. "We Dornish don't mind a bit of wind, Lady Arryn, but I confess, I've never seen a castle quite so intent on hiding in the clouds." Lysa raised a brow but said nothing as she turned around. "Come, we'll speak more inside." The hall was filled with light filtering through high-arched windows. Fires glowed in the hearths but couldn't quite drive the chill from the stones of the castle. Seated beside her son Robert, Lysa observed the Dornish delegation now seated across from her. Ardes Arryn sat to her right, silent as she kept gazing at Robert, who played with his toys. Doran Martell folded his hands over his chest as he thought about how interesting this proposal was. He had allowed Oberyn to speak for much of the meal, casual, probing, and always watching. The sand snakes whispered among themselves, their presence silent. Suddenly, once nightfall came around, the cry of a horn could be heard from the watchtower. A few moments later, a second airship, larger than the first, appeared above the mountain pass, descending slowly toward one of the stone terraces. Its hull bore the banner of the Imperial Union. Behind it, 3 Imperial Wyvern riders circled as escorts, one of them carrying the banner of the Imperial Union. Maximus had finally arrived, and they could get this meeting started after hours of waiting. The chamber was quiet when he entered. Maximus, cloaked in black and silver with the Imperial crest etched in the armor over his shoulders, walked into the room with his presence immediately grabbing everyone's attention. He removed his gloves slowly as he greeted the gathering. "Lady Regent," he said with a nod, "I apologize for the delay. Matters of state demanded I attend to them before I could leave the capital." Lysa rose, bowing her head as Maximus was of a much higher standing than her. "Your Excellency, we are honored." Maximus turned toward Doran. "Prince Doran, thank you for coming. And Prince Oberyn, it's nice to see you again along with your daughters." Oberyn smirked. "It's good to see you again, Your Excellency. I hope my niece is treating you well." "She is," replied Maximus. "I am glad that our 2 houses could come together." With everyone present, the formal meeting began. The chamber was sealed. Only trusted advisors remained and the Vale Lords, including Bronze Yohn Royce, who had voiced reservations from the start. Lysa opened the floor. "I believe the subject of this meeting is the proposed betrothal between my late husband's daughter Ardes and Prince Aegon Targaryen." Maximus nodded. "Correct. Aegon, as you know, is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen. Raised in Dorne, he embodies the fire of his father. It is our hope that this union could bind Dorne, the Vale, and the Imperial Union together, that we might work towards a stable future for Westeros." Lysa cut in as she turned towards her 6-year-old son. "Yet not even a lord of the Vale was consulted before such a proposal was suggested to me. The Targaryens are a name most here still associate with civil war and Dorne." "Is your ally now," Doran interrupted, "as part of the Imperial Union, as will be the Vale?" Royce leaned forward. "You presume much, Prince." "No," Maximus interrupted in a serious tone. "We offer much." He stood up and walked to the edge of the table. "The Imperial Union has secured peace across half the continent of Essos. Trade flows, pirates have been crushed, and famine is non-existent. But none of that reaches the Vale, not yet. Your mountains protect you, but they also isolate you. This alliance opens your gates even more, establishing stronger military and economic ties." Oberyn added, "With your daughter as a princess beside Aegon, your house stands not behind a crown, but beside it." Lysa looked at her daughter. Ardes met her gaze, understanding what her mother was asking. "I have no objections," Ardes said clearly. "Let the past die with the men who waged war over it. If this future is ours to shape, then let's shape it." Maximus stood. "I didn't come here to demand. I came to offer a hand. A throne will rise, and you can help shape the world it rules, or be ruled by it." He let the words hang as the lords looked around at each other. After a long pause, Lysa slowly exhaled. "If Ardes consents, and the lords of the Vale agree, then we will join you." Royce grumbled, but the other lords murmured in support. They had long been on the receiving end of merchandise from the Imperial Union, some of which they had integrated with their personal lives. If they were to refuse this proposal, then who knows what would happen once Maximus eventually takes over. Maximus extended his hand across the table as Lysa took it. "Welcome to a prosperous new future, my lady." It was at this moment that Lysa blushed as she realized how handsome Maximus was. If only she thought her head. The meeting ended and Ardes and Aegon were soon to be wed a month from now. Chapter 78, The Small Council Makes a Move. News of the betrothal between House Arryn and House Martell came as a shock to the entire continent. With continent being separated and preparing for multiple kings to battle, many thought that places like the Vale would just sit back and watch the conflict without ever joining any sides. But it seems that this was not the case. They were joining sides with Dorne, who was already aligned with the Imperial Union, making an ironclad alliance between the 2 great houses and the Imperial Union. Within the walls of the small council meeting, The letter was currently presented before the members of the council, including King Joffrey, who was not pleased to hear the news. He slammed his small fists on the table as his anger grew. This is a rebellion. If we allow them to join with that filthy empire, then we will be surrounded on all sides by enemies to the crown. Despite his anger, he did speak some truth. If House Arryn joined hands with House Martell, then that would create a powerful alliance between the Vale and Dorne, protected by the Imperial Union. Cersei knew this as well and had a very risky plan that if successful would secure the Vale, but if not, then it would just create another enemy in the north. Sitting at the opposite end of the table, Tyrion Lannister, who was serving as Hand of the King in place of Tywin, had something to say on the matter. Tyrion sipped from his wine cup and set it down gently. Well, he said, we did always know the Vale was stubborn, but now they found a friend in the snake pit of Dorne and a benefactor in this black-cloaked emperor. What did you expect, your grace? That they'd wait for us to come begging? Joffrey scowled. You speak as if it's a good thing. I speak as if it's inevitable, Tyrion replied. And if we want to stop the bleeding, we'll need more than outrage. We'll need leverage. Varys leaned forward, as he had just what they needed. Leverage, yes, and as it happens, there may be some unresolved business in the Vale. A thread we've not pulled. Cersei narrowed her eyes. Speak plainly, Varys. Varys smiled softly, turning to his left. Littlefinger. Littlefinger was surprised for a moment as Varys called him out, but remembering his past relationship with Lady Arryn, he knew what was about to be discussed. Hear me out, Varys continued. Lady Arryn is not a woman who forgets her lovers lightly. It might be possible to. He trailed off, wanted somebody else to saw what he couldn't. Swing the Vale to our side, Joffrey stated, his patience waning as this meeting was getting dragged on. Littlefinger smirked at the king. It's certainly a possibility, your grace. He nodded at Varys. The spider always knew how to stroke his ego just right at times. Tyrion took another gulp of his wine before adding his 2 cents. With the proper amount of flattery and promises, you might just success, Baelish, Tyrion said, leaning back in his chair. But let's not forget who we are dealing with here. A love-struck woman led by a man with a system we don't fully understand. Nods of agreement circulated around the table as Littlefinger shot Tyrion an appreciative glance. No one else on this council would see him as anything more than an up-jumped brothel keeper. But the imp was another matter entirely. They understood each other and there was somewhat of respect between them. The two shared a unique perspective, an understanding of the shadows that lingered beneath the surface of the realm. Joffrey, however, didn't have the experience to see the effects their plan would have, so he asked another question. Why not just send an assassin? Because, said Varys, that would drive them further into the arms of the Empire. Right now, the match is fresh. Artis has agreed, but the ink is barely dry. If someone close to Lisa were to raise concerns about the Dornish, about the Targaryen boy, about the true intentions of the Imperial Union, then perhaps the Vale's support could be undermined before the marriage is sealed. While Varys said this openly, he knew from the information he could gather that a storm was coming to the continent one way or another. The Imperial Union, with or without the Vale, would make their way to Westeros. The only question he had to ask himself was if his current situation was the correct path, or was it no longer a wise path for him to continue to take. Tyrion and Cersei had their own opinions on Littlefinger. Cersei saw him as a movable pawn that could be sacrificed for her benefit. Tyrion, while he understood Littlefinger and had some respect for him as somewhat of an ally in this game they were playing, he also knew that he was a man who would sell his own mother for a better title. Ultimately, it was decided that he would depart for the Vale to try and manipulate Lady Arryn into breaking the betrothal before they got married. Meanwhile, at Riverrun, the Lannister forces led by Jaime Lannister were besieging the castle for the 3rd week in a row. Supplies were beginning to run low inside the Tully stronghold, and the river had been blockaded by Lannister boats upstream. Edmure Tully had refused multiple offers of surrender. He still believed reinforcements from the north, or the Vale might come, though neither had answered his ravens. The reason for this was because the ravens never arrived. While Jaime Lannister focused on wearing down the walls, Robb Stark had other plans. He had moved swiftly through the woods, guided by Blackfish Tully and a dozen of his best riders. With the majority of the Lannister host camped around Riverrun, their supply lines stretched thin, and Jaime confident in his siege, Robb struck where they least expected. The Whispering Woods was thick and dense, its trees tall and clustered tightly together. Perfect place for an ambush. It was just before dawn when the first of the Lannister scouts were found dead, throats slit, arrows through their eyes. A patrol never returned, and by the time word reached Jaime, it was already too late. The Stark forces poured out from the woods like wolves, fast, furious, and without mercy. Robb led the charge himself, Grey Wind riding ahead of him. Roose Bolton took the left flank, while the Great John led from the right. The Lannister camp, unprepared for a strike so deep behind their lines, erupted into chaos. Tents burned, horses panicked, and men stumbled over each other in the dark trying to arm themselves. Jaime Lannister, awakened by the noise, emerged from his tent fully armored, sword in hand. He was halfway to forming a defensive ring with his bannermen when a spear took one of his guards through the throat. "Form ranks," he shouted. "Stand your ground, damn you!" But it was no use. The fighting was brutal and short. The Lannister men fought hard, but they were scattered, disorganized, and caught completely unaware. Within the hour, the entire force was either slain, routed, or captured. And Jaime Lannister, Golden Knight of Casterly Rock, was found by Grey Wind, pinned against a tree, sword gone, breath short, with Robb Stark's blade pointed at his throat. "You're a long way from your father's walls," Robb said. "And you're a boy playing at war," Jaime growled, though he did not struggle. "Then it must sting all the more to lose to me," Grey Wind growled, showing his teeth. Jaime smirked at the fact that he got caught. "So what now, young wolf? Kill me and you prove you're no better than the rest of us. Spare me and you give my father reason to burn the North to the ground." "I'm not killing you," Robb said, lowering his sword. "You're a bargaining chip that we will use against the Lannisters." Jaime didn't know the truth that Ned Stark was alive, so he was wondering why Robb didn't kill him to take revenge for the death of his father and their bannermen. The camp became quiet in the aftermath of the battle. Stark banners flew high over the woods. Prisoners were rounded up, the wounded treated. Word was sent to Riverrun. The siege was broken. The North had won a stunning victory, but the real threat was far from over. Tywin Lannister had marched his army east, capturing the castles of the River Lords along the way. With Jaime's army now defeated, he would have to turn his army around to fight the northern host and tame them once and for all. In Valyria, the reconstruction efforts were going well. Maximus had just arrived within the city as the hundreds of thousands of people who died during the war had been laid to rest in a massive region which was called the Land of the Fallen. It would be the place where past, present, and future warriors who died fighting for the Imperial Union would be laid to rest as brave warriors who took up the sword to fight for something greater than themselves. Maximus stood at the very beginning where the first soldier was laid to rest. Behind him was the entire Imperial harem, who wore their ceremonial clothes to honor the dead. Maximus proceeded towards the first grave where he placed his hand on the tombstone of the warrior and offered a silent prayer. The entire scene was being played around the Empire as the people joined him in honoring their dead. He continued to do this with each tomb for several hours without stopping even once. By the time Maximus reached the 100th grave, the sun had begun to set over Old Valyria. The sky was orange, casting long shadows across the endless rows of carved obsidian tombstones. Each one bore the sigil of the Fallen's Legion, etched beneath the symbol of the Imperial Union. No banners flapped, no horns blew, only the slow sound of the Emperor's footsteps and the soft rustling of silk as the Imperial harem followed behind. Not a single one of them dared speak. Each grave was marked not just with a name but a story. Small metal plates beside the stones listed their final battle, their legion, and a single word left by their commander: valiant, unyielding, honored. Maximus knelt at a grave marked simply, Aureus of Volantis. Died shielding his brothers during the siege of Maximus. Unyielding. He rested his hand on the cold stone and whispered something no one could hear. Then he stood, clenched his fist over his heart, and moved on. At the center of the Land of the Fallen was a circular dais. Upon it, a massive black pyre stood unlit, and beside it, a brazier of eternal flame drawn from the heart of the rebuilt city. As Maximus approached, an Imperial guard stepped forward and handed him a torch. He held the torch high, then touched it to the pyre. Flames rose towards the sky. The fire would burn for 3 days and 3 nights. As the fire roared behind him, Maximus turned to speak. His voice was low, but it could be heard across the crowd and throughout the realm. These men and women died not as tools of war, but as shields for peace. Not for glory, but for legacy. Let it be remembered. The Empire was not forged by gold or greed, but by sacrifice. and it shall be held together by the memory of those we lost." The crowd lowered their heads. Even the elite imperial guards dropped to one knee. "We call this the land of the fallen," Maximus said, stepping down from the dais. "But let no one think them forgotten. Their names are etched into the soul of this empire. So long as I draw breath, we will not forget them. Not today. Not ever." The ceremonial drums began to beat as he ended his speech. Behind him, a choir of boys and girls from across the Imperial Union, raised and educated by the state, began to sing the anthem of the dead, a melody sung in 6 languages, a song of mourning, a song of honor. Maximus remained in Valyria for the next few days before he departed back to Heaven's Reach. Chapter 79: The Small Council's Plan Fails. Arriving in the Eyrie, Littlefinger was allowed into the castle as a representative of House Baratheon. The Vale was technically still a part of what consisted of the 7 kingdoms at this point, as they had yet to formally announce their separation from House Baratheon. They also didn't recognize the authority of the boy King Joffrey, nor did they like the other people who were crowned as kings in this war. Littlefinger was escorted up the stairs and into the castle by the house guards of House Arryn. As he approached where Lady Arryn was waiting, he adjusted his cloak and made sure to look somewhat presentable. He was led to the grand hall of the castle where Lady Arryn was sitting alongside Roderick Arryn, the eldest son of Jon Arryn, born in 283 AC during the same time that Robb Stark was born. With the help of the potions that the houses of Westeros imported from the Imperial Union, many children historically who were supposed to be stillborn had actually been born. Roderick and Robb had grown up together, spending numerous months with each other within the Imperial Academy of Excellence. Once things started heating up in Westeros, they had returned to their respective positions as the heirs of their houses. Roderick wanted to help Robb when he learned about what happened to his uncle Lord Eddard Stark, but was counseled by other lords of the Vale and his mother to not call their banners for war. Ultimately, he decided to not intervene in the war and let the squabbling houses of Westeros duke it out. He had faith in Robb and the North to beat the Lannister armies and take the fight to Joffrey Baratheon for the execution of Eddard Stark. Robb knew his father wasn't dead, so the reason for the continuation of the fight was for the respect of his house and the independence of the North from the boy King Joffrey. Littlefinger took a deep breath before he stepped into the hall. His eyes immediately focused on Lysa, who was seated in the seat next to Roderick. Around them were the ladies and few other nobles of the Vale, who were already in the Eyrie discussing things with Lady Arryn. "Lady Arryn, Lord Roderick." Littlefinger bowed as he greeted the Lord of the Vale and the Lady of the Vale, who was still technically ruling the Vale. "I bring greetings from House Baratheon." Already he had to change the way he was going to approach this situation, as he expected to meet with Lady Arryn alone, not with the Lord of the Vale and other nobles present. Lysa remained silent, acknowledging the gesture with a simple nod. "Lord Baelish," she began. Littlefinger waited for her to continue. However, before she could speak further, Roderick chimed in. "We are aware of the turmoil that envelopes Westeros," he began. "The Vale has always done its duty to the kingdom, but duty to a dying realm is no longer virtue. The kingdom fractures day by day. The only loyalty worth keeping is to one's people and one's future." Littlefinger showed a smile before responding. "And yet alliances built in haste often shatter the same way. The match with House Martell may seem prudent, but the Empire has made many promises and kept few. They move fast, too fast. The moment Dorne is no longer useful, the Imperial Union will leave them scorched." He read about the Imperial Union, studied about the things they have accomplished and how powerful they were. He knew things that most great houses didn't know, and he wanted to leverage that by creating false narratives to create a conflict of interest between the two. "You've always been clever with words, Peter," she said, using his first name. "But I've heard the same whispers from you before." Littlefinger stepped forward a little, lowering his voice. "And yet here I am, Lysa, not as some schemer in King's Landing, but as a man who knows what's coming. The Empire has bled half the continent already. You think they'll leave the Vale untouched once their foothold in Dorne is secure? They don't want allies. They want subjects." Roderick clenched his jaw but remained quiet. He watched his mother's expression, trying to read what she was thinking. "You assume I have no understanding of what's at stake," she said. "You think I agreed to this union on a whim?" "No," Littlefinger said. "I think you agreed to it out of fear, or worse, out of loneliness." Roderick rose from his seat at this statement, causing the guards to place their hands on their swords. "Watch your tone." But Lysa raised her hand, stopping her son and the guards. "Fear? Perhaps, but not loneliness. Roderick and I made this decision together. House Martell and the Imperial Union has pledged more than soldiers. They've promised structure, trade, medicine, and dignity. What has Joffrey offered? More crowns for his puppets and heads on pikes for the rest. Littlefinger's smile faded as he realized that the cards he had brought to play were slowly running out. He knew he had to make some changes quickly. Then let me offer you something better, he said. A seat at the table in King's Landing. Real power, not as an appendage to the Martells or a vassal to an emperor who claimed to be the apostle of some gods from who knows where, but as the Vale reborn anew, as a cornerstone of Westeros' future. One we build ourselves united with House Baratheon. Roderick rose up again. A future under Joffrey? You offer us a place in a kingdom where mad boys play king and honest men die in dungeons or get beheaded. No, Lord Baelish. I've seen the Empire. I've walked through its halls and studied in its school. They are what Westeros should have been while you cling to ruins. Roderick was showing the education that he had gotten from overseas. This was his first time speaking in such a public manner with other lords and ladies watching. Littlefinger looked at Lisa, hoping that she would say something. You always wanted to be more than a lord, Peter, she said. But your dreams are still small. The world is changing, and you come bearing promises from a dying house which is run by a child born of incest. We will not break this betrothal. It was silent, and for a long moment, Littlefinger stood motionless. He had come here to use his old relationship to manipulate Lisa, but from the start it seemed that his plan was doomed to fail once he was placed in front of other nobles. Then I suppose I've overstayed my welcome. Roderick gestured to the guards, who began to step forward. Escort Lord Baelish to the gates, he said. Littlefinger turned and walked out of the hall without another word. But inside, he wondered what would become of him since he failed his task. Would Joffrey behead him or would Cersei? He had played his cards and lost. Lisa ordered some of the ladies to leave the room, leaving her, Roderick, and a few of the nobles alone. From the shadows of the corner, a Shadowhand agent stepped out and walked next to Lisa. I guess I must thank the Imperial Union for warning me about what House Baratheon had planned. Lisa stated, as our future allies, it is only right that we protect both our and your interests until the alliance is cemented, replied the Shadowhand agent. And this is for you, young Lord of the Vale. The Shadowhand agent pulled out a sword and handed it to Roderick. The sword was made with Valyrian steel and enchanted with dwarven runes to make it stronger. It was a gift for House Arryn to improve the relationship between House Arryn and the Imperial Union. Roderick took the weapon, his eyes widening as he unsheathed it. He ran his fingers down the dwarven runes that he had learned about during his time at the academy. He never imagined that he would receive a gift like this, yet still he wasn't going to be swayed by this gift. It's perfect, Roderick stated as he looked back at the agent. Our loyalty won't be bought, but your gesture is appreciated. The agent nodded their head, fully aware what the Lord meant. We respect that and would have it no other way. He turned his attention back to Lisa. Lady Arryn, we'll share intelligence with your kingdom to protect you from any further surprise visits or other matters of importance that directly affects the Vale. Lisa nodded her head as the agent stepped into the shadows and disappeared out of sight. The other lords of the Vale were glad that House Arryn made the decision to become betrothed to House Martell. The benefits and other things that they would receive were immense, and soon enough they imagined that they would eventually get involved in the affairs of the continent. Chapter 80 Brothers at War. Approaching the port of Lorith, the Second Imperial Fleet responsible for patrolling the northern part of Essos under the command of Admiral Vaella was carrying soldiers and food. The Council of Princes, who used to be ones who ruled Lorith, had sent a message to the Imperial Union secretly requesting imperial aid for the island. Currently they are going through a famine caused by the Council of Magisters' policies, and the common people were suffering. In exchange, the princes wanted Lorith to join the Imperial Union while they were able to keep their positions. Maximus accepted this offer and proceeded to send the necessary soldiers to take the city and food to feed the people. As Admiral Vaella's ship docked at the port, a representative of the Council of Magisters had arrived with a group of guards to meet the leader of the Imperial fleet. Their arrival was unannounced, so the council were curious as to why they were here, especially during a time like this. Walking down the ramp of the ship, Admiral Vaella approached the group accompanied by her own guards. The representative bowed his head respectfully as he was in the presence of Imperial soldiers who could kill him in an instant if he misspoke. I bring greetings from the Council of Magisters to find out the purpose of your presence here, Admiral, the representative said, forcing a smile on his face. His guards stiffened behind him, uncertain whether they were meant to stand their ground or make way. The harbor around them had grown silent. Fishermen paused what they were doing. Dockworkers stopped stacking crates. Eyes were drawn to the banner of the Imperial Union waving on the ships. Admiral Viella didn't smile or offer greetings. "We're here to feed the people of Lorith and to remove those who made them starve." The representative's face turned pale at this response. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Admiral, this is highly irregular. You can't simply arrive." "I can," Viella interrupted. "And I have." Behind her, Imperial soldiers were already disembarking. Crates marked with the seal of the Imperial Union were rolled down ramps: grain, salted fish, dried fruits, preserved meat. Dockworkers watched, split between suspicion and hope. Then, seeing no resistance, a few ran forward to help. The Magister's guards felt uneasy as they could sense the atmosphere was turning tense, and they didn't want to die defending a stupid council that made their lives worse. "You will take me to the council," Viella continued. "Now!" The representative swallowed, then turned without a word and led the way. His guards followed, but their eyes kept watching the growing Imperial presence at the port. By midday, word of the fleet's arrival had spread. In the outer districts, people were already lining up for food being distributed from hastily set up stations. Imperial soldiers kept order, but the crowd was not angry. They were hungry, tired, and curious. Most had no loyalty to the Magisters, whose policies had emptied granaries and raised taxes while hoarding supplies for themselves. In the Hall of Lorith, the Council of Magisters met in emergency session. They had heard the rumors, and now they watched as Admiral Viella entered followed by 2 towering Imperial guards. She walked to the center of the chamber as the Magisters began to shout. "You are not welcome here," one of the elder Magisters shouted. "You've made sure of that," she replied, "by turning your city into a tomb. You have no right to interfere in the internal affairs of Lorith," another snapped. "I have every right," she said. "The princes of Lorith, rightful stewards of this island, have petitioned for entry into the Imperial Union. They've named you tyrants and parasites. Their claim has been reviewed and determined to be true by His Excellency." The Magisters gasped at this statement. One Magister rose to protest, only to be yanked back by another who had already seen where this was going. Viella raised a scroll and unrolled it. "Here is the signed declaration. Lorith is now under Imperial protection, effective immediately." "You can't." One of the Magisters tried to protest, but he was cut off. "I can," she said. "And I already have." The chamber erupted in shouts and protests, but Viella didn't flinch. She nodded once to her guards who arrested the council. Some came peacefully while others tried to fight and ended up getting beat half to death. Outside, Imperial banners were being raised across the city. The princes of Lorith, escorted by Imperial officers, walked freely once again into the palace. The people began to gather in the streets as the grain carts rolled in, and food was handed out in the open. The Council of Magisters were led out of the hall in chains. Not one citizen lifted a hand to stop it. Lorith had been taken without a single sword raised. After a few days passed, the princes were brought to Heaven's Reach to go over what was going to happen to the city and them. They were brought to a room where Aaron and Alarin were waiting for them. Once they took their seats, a servant brought a document and placed it in front of them. This document outlines all of the things that will happen to the city and yourselves. As agreed upon, you 3 will retain your titles as the princes of Lorith and will be granted the authority to rule over the city as you previously had. In return for this, Lorith will follow Imperial laws and will be subject to improvement to Imperial standards. Alarin explained. The princes skimmed the document carefully, each of them eyeing different sections. The eldest of the 3, Prince Mehran, ran his finger down the lines detailing military oversight and trade restructuring. Prince Darren focused on the economic clauses, taxation, grain flow, and tariffs. The youngest, Prince Laven, seemed more interested in the parts concerning their personal status and the security of their families. After a long pause, Mehran looked up. "So, we are to remain rulers in name, but you'll have soldiers stationed in the city. A governor to oversee us." Aaron, arms crossed, leaned forward slightly. "Not a governor, an advisor. She'll ensure compliance with Imperial law, assist with the rebuilding process, and keep an eye out for any old habits. You remain rulers because you asked for our help. That help comes with structure, not chains." Laven smirked. "Just gold shackles instead of steel." "No shackles at all," Alarin replied. "You have your city back. We're giving you the tools to keep it. Darren spoke next. And the Council of Magisters? What happens to them? They'll face trial in the Imperial Court, Olerin said. Their fate will be decided according to the laws they denied others. When found guilty, they'll never return to Lorith. Mehran exchanged glances with the others. Then we accept. Aaron nodded, satisfied. Good. The people of Lorith need leaders, not parasites. We expect food distribution to continue, trade routes to be restored, and the port cleaned up. The famine will end, and so will the complacency. A servant stepped forward with ink and quills. One by one, the princes signed. When it was done, Olerin rose. You'll return to Lorith tomorrow. The people will see you take your place again, with the full backing of the Imperial Union. Back in Lorith, the mood was changing fast. With the Magisters gone and food flowing, the people were beginning to speak again, openly and hopefully. Soldiers of the Imperial Union remained visible, but they didn't harass or patrol unnecessarily. Instead, they worked with dockworkers and citizens, helping to repair infrastructure that had crumbled under years of misrule. The old slums around the port were already planned to be surveyed by Imperial architects. As an Imperial city, there was a certain standard that it needed to meet. The current Lorith was well below those standards, and that would need to be fixed quickly. With the year 299 AC rolling around, the war had started to intensify. Eddard Stark joined Robb and his army as they marched to war against the Lannisters. The Lords of the North were surprised when he arrived, as they thought he was dead. The entire army was in an uproar that their lord had returned alongside Sansa and Arya. Now the northern cause was reinforced not only by the newly crowned king in the north, but their former lord who they thought was dead. Catelyn was down in the south, trying to convince Renly to form an alliance with the north against Tywin Lannister, so she didn't get to see her husband return. As the news spread throughout the continent, many thought this was a lie created by the north to keep the fighting going and hide their losses, or a way to gain more support from other noble houses. Nobody would truly believe it until they saw it themselves. Tywin Lannister wasn't like the others when he heard this news. He knew that there had to be some Imperial intervention for this news to be flying around. He knew some of things that the Imperials were capable of, and faking a person's death was definitely one of those things. But he also saw this as an opportunity to take out two birds with one stone. With both Eddard and Robb being in the same army, all he needed to do was defeat the army, and he would take out two of the most important people for the north. He gathered the lords of his army in Harrenhal and began to strategize on their next steps forward. In the south, Stannis and his forces had arrived at Siege Storm's End, which ruined the North's chance at an alliance. A thick mist surrounded the fields around Storm's End as the sun rose over the sea, casting light across the battlefield. The banners of House Baratheon waved in opposite directions, Stannis' black stag against gold, Renly's golden stag against green. Brothers in blood, now enemies in war fighting over succession. Renly's host was massive. Lords from the Reach and the Stormlands stood behind him, thousands of armored knights ready to fight for their king. His camp was vibrant and confident in their ability to win the battle. Many believed Stannis wouldn't dare attack with such inferior numbers. But Stannis dared because he had the Sellsword companies of Essos with him. He always dared to do something, especially when it was hard. Atop a hill overlooking the battlefield, Ser Davos stood at his king's side, watching as the vanguard formations shifted in preparation. His army was outnumbered, but tighter, more disciplined, with battle-hardened veterans of the Stepstones and the Blackwater. The plan was simple. Break Renly's left flank early, use the narrow terrain to bottle the larger force, then grind them down with superior positioning. But there was risk, always risk, such as unexpected variables. As the horns sounded from Renly's side, the Green Army began to move. Heavy cavalry took the lead, charging forward with banners flying. Renly himself sat atop his stallion in bright green armor trimmed in gold, laughing with Ser Loras at his side. He's come to die, and I'll send him back to Dragonstone in a box, Renly said, more amused than angry. Stannis watched his brother from afar. He was always a fool, he muttered, then raised a hand. Signal the Scorpions. Break the charge. Flaming bolts tore through the mist as the Scorpions unleashed their payload. Horses screamed. Men were flung from saddles, and the front line of Renly's cavalry broke apart before it could reach Stannis' shields. Soon after, the first line had reached, causing the first clash between the two sides. Steel met steel as the first lines collided. Stannis' men held tight formations, spears locked, and shields overlapping with each other. Renly's army, while larger, fought with less coordination, each lord eager for glory, each knight charging where they pleased. That chaos favored Stannis and gave him a chance of victory over his brother's army, which was filled with green boys who never saw war. On the flank, Ser Davos led a detachment through a narrow wooded path. With him were a handful of mercenary tacticians helping reinforce the siege and advise Stannis' commanders with their knowledge of warfare from Essos. Davos struck from the side just as Renly's knights began to press. The flank began to buckle as some of Renly's men tried to rally while others broke entirely. From the rear, smoke began to rise, fires spreading in Renly's camp, ignited by saboteurs sent by Stannis during the night. Horses panicked, supply wagons were set ablaze, and morale started to unravel. Shouting turned to screaming as orders went unheard amidst the chaos. Renly's command tent, too close to the battle, was suddenly vulnerable. Ser Loras ordered a retreat, calling for Renly to fall back to Storm's End, but Renly refused. "I am the king. I do not run." He thought himself invincible with his rainbow guards, but kings bleed like any man. A stray bolt struck his horse, causing it to throw Renly to the ground. Before he could rise, a group of Stannis knights charged, swords at the ready. Ser Loras screamed and fought with all his might, barely managing to drag Renly out of the fray. They vanished into the smoke with a handful of Tyrell guards. When word spread that Renly had fallen, or at least fled, the collapse was swift. Men dropped their swords and banners. Lords called for retreat. Stannis' army, exhausted but intact, advanced. Within an hour, the field belonged to Stannis. Storm's End itself opened its gates soon after. The garrison, disillusioned and leaderless, surrendered without a fight. Stannis entered the castle he had once starved defending, now claiming it not as castellan, but as king. In the great hall, Stannis sat beneath the banners of his house. A black stag on a gold hung high behind him. A messenger entered and bowed. "Lord Renly escaped. He rides toward Highgarden and the Tyrells are with him." Stannis' jaw tightened. "Then he'll bring war to his own house's doorstep. Let him flee. I have the Stormlands and need to prepare for what comes next. Send word across the Stormlands. Storm's End has fallen. My claim stands, and I will not stop until the Iron Throne is mine or destroyed." The messenger bowed and ran off to start sending the ravens. With Storm's End in his hands, Stannis wanted to raise more support for his cause with the surrounding lords of the Stormlands. He would also go to those who he captured and offer them a choice to join him and swear fealty for their life, or be beheaded. The fates of war were harsh, but Stannis was a lawful man. He would not have traitors in his midst, and saw the lords who followed Renly, not traitors but misguided as they thought Renly had a chance to win against Stannis. A few moments later, his guards had brought in the wife of Renly, Lady Margaery Tyrell. "She's going to be a good negotiating card," he thought as he ordered to give her a room and put her under house arrest. He was no barbarian and would treat her with the respect she deserved in order to negotiate with the Tyrells.